Part 6, I thought it might be kind of interesting to show you what happens to the brain when in fact we are in this moment of being overwhelmed and dysregulated. All too often, we get to a place where we're having a reaction in our body. We might have a stomach ache, we might have a headache, we might feel it in our jaw. I'm going to ask you, where do you feel your stress, right? When the coercive controller is having us walk on eggshells, we don't know how to behave, I would call that like an inability, again, to just relax, to be yourself with the coercive controller. And sometimes when we're really stressed out, we have what we call trauma responses. And there are 4 major trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And sometimes we learn these trauma responses from the people around us. Sometimes the coercive controller might often show fight. Sometimes, not all the time. They might have a temper or be angry a lot or try to dominate, or maybe they act a little bit like a bully and maybe do a lot of criticizing. And maybe sometimes when you're really upset, you do the same thing. That doesn't mean you're anything like the coercive controller. What that means is that in those moments of fear, intense anxiety and fear, your response is to get really angry, is to fight back. Think about being in a wolf's den. You're in a wolf's den. You're cornered. What could you do? Some people, maybe in a wolf's den, are going to fight back. They're just going to give it their all. Other people might flee, which is the next one, flight. They might flee. They might try to get out of there. They were not going to fight. They're just going to try to get out of there. So part of what the flight reaction is when it comes to trauma is to just really immerse ourselves in other things, to be really, perhaps some people might call us hyper, because we're constantly going, because we over worry about things. We are a high achiever. We want to do really, really well on everything. We like totally immerse ourselves in our soccer game or in our basketball game or in our math homework, right? And we might have a lot of feelings of panic and anxiety. So now you're still in this wolf's den. Maybe you're not, maybe typically you don't fight back and you don't run, but maybe you freeze. You just don't really do very much at all. You just freeze. You might have some depression. You might actually, we call it disassociation, where we don't even really deal with what's going on. We like almost pretend there's not a wolf there, because that's easier to pretend that the wolf isn't there. We might have something called brain fog, where things just are always like, can't like figure it out. We might become detached. We might say, we don't need to talk to people that we care about because we want to detach, because it's just easier not to engage, not healthier, but easier. Think kind of like hibernating, right? Might feel lifeless. We might feel spaced out. We might isolate ourselves. And then the last trauma response is to fawn, is to be a people pleaser, is to do whatever someone else tells us to do, even if we don't really want to do it. And coercive controllers are really good at getting people to do what they don't want to do, right? So we don't have boundaries, and it's not our fault, but the coercive controller keeps crossing those boundaries, right? And that we don't really make decisions on our own. We're kind of nervous to do that. And we definitely avoid any conflict. And so if you see yourself in any of these, it's normal. It's totally normal. I have these, and maybe I have one more than the other, and maybe you have one more than the other. The idea is to figure out why we have them and how we can support ourselves to be able to express ourselves in a healthier way. Talking to our protected parent, talking to a therapist, talking to a relative, someone that we care for, someone we know that cares for us, someone that we can trust. Because when we're living with a coercive controller, it is very hard to be ourselves and to be calm, because we can never be calm with the coercive controller. So we might have one of these trauma responses, and we might have them with the coercive controller, but we also might have them actually with people we really care about. We might find ourselves getting really angry over silly things with our protective parent simply because we're so stressed out. Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense.